to help us with some of our meager expenses. We'd really appreciate it. Just a heads up for all you guys, BATV is recording tonight's event for broadcast, so you can check our website for show times later in the week. Plus, BATV provides me with a DVD, and then we also put the video clips of each individual reader on the internet. Our first writer tonight, his name is Glen Heefner. He's a technical writer who's authored many arcane, painfully boring user guides for network products in the last 20 years. Glen tells us, the guides walk the users through their steps. The unsettled characters in my stories don't have a guide, so they run. Sometimes, somewhere, other times just away, but oh, do they run. He has yet to submit his work, 2 pieces of flash fiction and 4 short stories totaling 97 pages, for publication. Tonight, he's reading from his very first story called Rory's Words. Here's Glen Heefner.
Thanks, Kevin. Jimmy, the first-person storyteller, is a 40-ish man whose wife abruptly left their childless marriage 2 years before the story begins. Only 3 weeks after that, he had to ask Brenda, the trusted vet, to put his ailing cat to sleep. In the present, Jimmy heads down the big hill on his old bicycle to the center of town for Oktoberfest. With too great a head of steam, he's not able to react when a dog runs out from between parked cars. The collision with the dog launches Jimmy over his handlebars. A friend of his, Dusty, and I'm quoting here, who played second opposite me at short on an unfortunate fast-pitch team, ran toward me, yelled, "Safe!" I saw the whole thing. I think you've got a good case. A minute later, the most precious little girl I think I've ever seen crossed the street toward me, and she said in a spooky monotone, "Mister, you hurt my dog." Jimmy, the girl, who is 8-year-old Rory, and her father take the dog Radar to Brenda at the animal hospital, where Jimmy finds everything to be way too familiar for his own comfort. As they wait for Brenda, Rory is nervous but not very attentive to Radar, and Daniel, her father, is about to tell Jimmy his story, how everything changed when his wife left Rory and him 7 months earlier. The portion I'll be reading is from the last third of the story. I appreciate you still being here, Daniel starts. It's got to be helping her to see that you care too. You know, those two used to be inseparable, her and Radar. They grew up together, basically. Everything changed when her mom walked out in March. School. A chuckle bursts out of the good little man and takes even him by surprise. It used to be like a game Rory played with us. Yak, yak, yak about all the things she was learning. You couldn't get a word in edgewise at the dinner table. Her mom and I would wink at each other and let Rory go ahead and spill it all out. Her mom really did love her. We'd lay awake later giggling, really giggling, about how fascinated Rory was. Lots of nights. Daniel pauses, so I step in just to get him to start up again. That fits. I mean, with how serious she is for 8. Focused, I guess, alert. Yeah. Oh, she's serious, all right, but I can't say focused. She's slipping, Jim. She's slipping into, well, just preferring to be alone. Her words are gone. It's like somebody stole them. Now he turns to face the window, closes the door on what happened to their marriage, on what anyone can do to give Rory hope, on why this child didn't latch onto her dog all the harder after her mom left. Don't be a jerk and go and tell your story. I think to myself. That would be comparing. This is entirely about the little girl. In due time, Daniel, I tell him, and I can see he's done. Tired done. A skinny little redhead in one of those smocks stands with her foot propping a door open and breaks our latest silent streak as she calls out, "Radar?" We spend the interval that follows listening to doors slam and pets shriek in terror. Too familiar, I'm thinking. But there's nothing to say about my times here that could help Rory or Daniel. Finally, Brenda makes 2 taps on our examining room door. The first thing she does is pat Rory's head and say sweetly to her, "Hi, cutie." Brenda throws a glance to my face and then to her own left foot, where it lingers. So I fold my arms across my chest, as if this stance of mine will ward off bad news in case there is any. But she opens her mouth a good second and a half before speaking. "Those x-rays we took when you came in, it doesn't look so good." Without a thought or plan, I find myself slaloming left around Daniel and then to the right around Brenda. I yank the heavy door and bolt for the lobby and beyond, where I get as far as their dwarf red bushes before I get sick. My palms are stuck to the knees of my jeans, but with every drumbeat of my heart against the wall of my chest, I'm able to loosen my fingers a little. It's then that I remember to breathe. A small voice, but unambiguous like your conscience in a movie, tells me, "Go back in." Instead of disobeying, I'm grateful that the voice waited until I had my breath. So I waddle up the walk, and the steps too, all the way to the door. My hand slides right off the handle, though, because in that shiny glass is one of those Scream caricatures wearing my black t-shirt and my Royals hat. 2 weeks later, on a Friday, Dusty came by. I saw that ratty pickup turn into my driveway. This because I was outside anyway, doing what? I don't recall. I just remember flinching a lot, as if I was getting electrical shocks every time there was a noise. The squeak of his brakes, the slam of his door against apparently no weather stripping, and then the fizz and puff of a beer bottle opening and his cooler closing. We plopped our butts down on the top of my picnic table in the front yard. In between my invincible white pine and the overgrown juniper is a look at downtown Dittersdorf that you would get in the viewfinder of a camera turned vertical. It was dusk, and I realized right away that I had needed some of this softness around the edges of things. "So, Jimmy, you didn't have to have stitches or anything?" Dusty said. I heard me let out a laugh, a good one. We went on to cover a few more things. The tournament, where we actually did play very good ball above our heads. We remembered getting a lot of runners on that year. How we just weren't knocking them in with any consistency. He told me Kurt, our left fielder, was moving to Arizona in a week, which was news to me. When I walked him back to his clunker, Dusty held the door open and wanted to know, "Whatever happened to that dog?" I just said I didn't know. Fact is, I hadn't known Dusty was aware of anything that took place after he'd made light of things and pissed me off down there in town. The next morning was crisp and blue. I jumped into the van and went to see Brenda, where somehow, without trying hard, I managed to finagle Daniel's address out of her. She was busy, and neither of us talked about what may have happened to Radar. Then I drove across that hill and stopped in front of Daniel's. Guts I've got. I spotted Rory in the front yard tossing a ball over her head, catching it in her tiny gloves. I grabbed mine from under the seat. When I eased my knee onto the grass next to her, my jeans stuck to the scab, so I had to really suck it up just to choke out, "Hiya, beautiful." She peered down at me with her head kind of tilted, that's all. So I said, "You know me, right?" She leaned into my ear and whispered, "You ran over radar." Her eyes are dark brown, and this resolved a question that, for no reason I can imagine, has been in my head. Her teeth are short, and it struck me that this is the only distinction between Rory and the movie star she could someday be. I nodded slowly for her. After this edgy pause with her standing over me, I confessed, "I know y'all are mad at me." One of her laces had come loose and was lying across the blades of grass. "Mind if I tie this for you?" "Nope," she said, puffy on the P. I snugged her pink tenny to her foot, gave it 2 sharp, "there you go" slaps. Then I offered, "Let me toss you a couple," and we did play catch. "You got an arm on you," I said with so much enthusiasm that I probably sounded shifty. She did the duckbill thing with her lips that I'd seen her do when Daniel told her to sit down at the vet's. "You go to Truman, don't you?" I asked her. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get any. "Well, I think it looks like a nice school, so do you like it?" At this, Rory tipped her head to the right, could have been deliberating. Words might come next, I thought, but I was wrong. "Rory, when do you get to see your mom?" She singed the throwback to me. After 3 or 4 more, she held the ball out to her side, sunny side up, the way you might unconsciously hold the next apple for a horse behind you. "Every night," she said, "almost every." I peeled my glove off and held it in my throwing hand. Daniel had told me that his ex now lives in Kansas City, and that's hours away. In the kitchen, Daddy holds her hands. He looks at her. Still baffled, wishing I wasn't, I said, "I kind of meant the times when you get to talk to her." Rory shook her head in slow-mo, while I was already regretting having interrupted her. 6 years as president for the manufacturing union local at the plant had puffed me up with a lofty sense of conversational mission, as if it's my job to keep everybody on the subject at hand. I always have to be careful not to sound like I'm steering. Marriage gave me a ton of practice at reining it in, but I'm sure I still, in the parlance of my ex-wife, generally suck at it. "Guess you wouldn't feel right horning in on their time together?" I said, to pry Rory's voice back open if I just could. She kicked a leaf on the grass. Then she shook her head very fast this time with a little tip to signal me I'd missed something. "I'm sleeping," she said. And then I know I sucked my lips in, and the machine that was cranking out all these questions screeched to a halt, the way the monsters do at the plant at the end of the second shift. Rory threw the ball back, and we played for a few more minutes before I tossed one too high and she had to go chase it. When she bent to pick it up, radar lumbered into my field of vision from somewhere uphill around the house. He snatched up the ball and took a few paces in reverse with his tail fanning. Daniel was standing at the corner of the garage with the business end of a leash in his left hand and his right arm raised at the elbow, palm out, in a stance fit for taking the oath of office. So I returned the salute. Back in the van, I pushed the window lever, intending to flick out a bur oak leaf that was stuck in the web of my glove. But I left it there and slid the glove under my seat. When the first week in April comes around next year, the smell of damp grass will funnel up my nose. The sounds I conjure to myself, like the thwack of a bat against a ball, those are going to slice up like crocuses through the overwinter crust that's always blanketing the restless ball player in me. In my mind, there's a subterranean factory where I stamp out vignettes of double plays and game-ending singles for the season we're about to start. I'll reach under the seat and pull up my glove, and this leathery leaf will still be there. This is what I like about these. Time passes, sure, and their heyday may be over, but damn, they're tough and they're not going anywhere. They stick around. You can count on it. Thanks.